Cities Aviv is an anomaly in cloud rap. He was a part of the wave in the early 2010s, but while most of his peers were making music influenced by Memphis and Houston rap and focused on capturing the feeling of pure bliss, Cities Aviv made psychedelic rap music more influenced by shoegaze and punk. Instead of the blissful feeling in early A$AP Rocky or Main Attractions music, Cities Aviv explores a broader range of emotions and pushes the genre's boundaries, switching up his style slightly with every release. Online he's been described as a vaporwave MC Ride, which is just straight up wrong and belittles his music and completely disregard all the unique influences and sounds in Cities Aviv's music. I would rather place him next to experimental artists such as Lil Ugly Mane, James Ferraro, and Yves Tumor. Not that they have too much in common music-wise, but in the sense that they make music that blurs the line between mainstream and alternative music, such as punk, industrial, and noise, and reinvent themselves on a regular basis without trying too hard. In this video, I will try to do Cities Aviv's music justice by going over his discography, some of his influences, his label, and side projects. Cities Aviv was born Gavin Mays in Memphis, Tennessee. Growing up, he was exposed to Memphis rap like Kingpin Skinny Pimp and Playa Fly from his cousins, and he also owned a few albums of his own, but his real interest in music started with the internet and finding artists like Non-Fiction, Jedi Mind Tricks, Big Pun, and Mos Def. Aside from rap music, he was also into metal and hardcore music, which is evident on his first publicly available release. Together with some friends from Memphis, he had a band called Copwatch, from which a 2008 demo is available on YouTube. The music on it is hardcore punk on the more metallic side with Gavin on vocals. It's pretty decent for a first demo, and Gavin's vocal delivery is not bad, but at points it's kind of awkward. The vocals here are regular hardcore screaming, which in my opinion doesn't fit Gavin as well as the shouting flow he would develop on the early Cities Aviv releases. The demo is worth a listen if you're either a big hardcore fan or interested in the early career of Cities Aviv, but it's nowhere near as good as his solo music. Gavin was also dabbling in rap music on the side of Copwatch, but when the band split up, he decided to take it seriously. In an interview with Memphis Magazine, he talked about how he wanted to incorporate some of the elements of punk and noise music into his own style. He adopted his new moniker Cities Aviv and released his debut album Digital Lows in 2011 for the label Fat Sandwich. The noise and punk elements can't be heard that much on this album, but would become more prevalent later on. On the record, Aviv's vocals are much more clear than on the albums that would follow a few years later, and the beats are pretty standard, chill hip-hop beats, with the exception of the song Die Young, which samples Depeche Mode and got more of an industrial vibe. This is a good introduction for the more mainstream rap fans that have never heard of Cities Aviv, but I personally think it's the least interesting album in his discography. It's by no means bad, and it has a lot of good songs, but after hearing albums like Black Pleasure and Man Plays the Horn, which I will talk about later in the video, I know that Cities Aviv is capable of so much more than this. The highlight of the release is the closing track Float On, which samples chillwave artist Blackbird Blackbird's cover of Modest Mouse song by the same name. The song feels very melancholic, both in the instrumental and Cities Aviv's rapping, which is rare in this genre, where it's mostly the beats which are emotional. It's the most cloud rap reminiscent song on the release, but it sounds more like an indie pop song with rapping than other cloud rap from the same period. It's definitely a unique song in Cities Aviv's catalog, and a must listen. On the follow-up Black Pleasure from 2012, the music becomes much more interesting and offers a unique take on cloud rap. The genre is often described as dreamy, but it's usually in a very cartoonish, drifting on clouds type of way. The music on Black Pleasure sounds more like actual dreams. The beats have a hypnagogic feel to them and often sounds distant, and the vocals are often buried in the mix. And the mood varies from song to song. Songs like Forever 2012 sound very euphoric, while I Drank Up All the Clouds are darker and almost sound a bit nightmarish. One point of reference Gavin brings up in different interviews regarding his unique vocals is the shoegaze band My Bloody Valentine and their album Loveless, and how they mixed their vocals to be kind of buried. There is also the Death Grips comparison I've seen online regarding Aviv's shouted delivery on some tracks. I can see the similarities, but I think this comparison is ill-informed. Both Cities Aviv and MC Ride are fans of metal and punk music, which is probably where the influences stem from. My favorite tracks of the album are Forever 2012, Tears, and Not That I'm Anywhere. Forever 2012 is pure bliss. The beat sounds more like a chillwave song than a cloud rap beat, and the song captures the feeling of a perfect dream. Tears is more of a regular cloud rap song, but it's perfectly executed. It got spacey piano keys and a beautiful chorus from Remar, and is a perfect track for drifting off to sleep. Not That I'm Anywhere is the biggest hit on the album, and for good reasons. The song feels disorienting and euphoric at the same time, and it sounds like the type of dream that you can't quite remember what it was, except that it was good. The distant guitar sample and the psychedelic melody makes me think of the aforementioned My Bloody Valentine and their song When You Sleep, but in the form of a cloud rap song. A lot of the beats on the album are produced by Gavin himself, but the real star behind the production is Repelled Ghosts, who is behind the fantastic beats to Forever 2012 and Not That I'm Anywhere. The year after Black Pleasure released, Gavin dropped an EP called .avi with demos of songs made between 2011 and 2013. It has since been deleted from streaming services, but is available on YouTube for those interested. The vaporwave tag that people like to apply to Cities Aviv is actually somewhat fitting on this EP, especially on the instrumental closer Feel. Around this time period, Cities Aviv relocated to New York. Digital Lows and Black Pleasure had gained popularity online amongst blogs and landed him a deal with the label Young One, a rap-focused sub-label of the bigger indie label Partisan Records. Together they released a 2014 follow-up record called Come to Life. The album is a continuation of the sound introduced on Black Pleasure, but with some added dance music elements. Some highlights are the song Vibrations with its groovy bassline, and the more hype track Still, featuring singer Bizarre with its breakbeats in the second half of the song. The closing track, Don't Ever Look Back, is pretty much Cities Aviv rapping over a house song. There are still some songs that are more regular cloud rap, like the track Self 100, Know Who You Are. The beat is produced by the industrial hip-hop artist Blackie, who is worthy of his own video. For those who haven't heard his music, it kinda sounded like Death Grips years before Death Grips was a thing. If Cities Aviv was inspired by any previous industrial hip-hop act, it's probably Blackie. For fans of Aviv's music, I recommend the song Deconstructive Practices from his self-titled 2005 album, and the song Regrets of an Average African-American Amateur Drug Lord from the 2008 album Wilderness of North America. Back to Cities Aviv, Come to Life is a worthy follow-up to Black Pleasure, even though it doesn't have any songs in the same league as Not That I'm Anywhere or Forever. It's definitely an overlooked album, and is being overshadowed by its predecessor. For both Come to Life and Black Pleasure, the lyrics are buried in the mix and kinda abstract at points, but the rapping adds a lot of emotion to the music, even if you don't pay attention to them. When following the lyrics, I interpret a lot of them as liberating and being about being present in the moment and not giving in to the fakeness of the internet and social media. Shortly after the release of Come to Life, Young Ones shut down. Gavin was now independent and decided to team up with Geoff Rickley, the frontman of the emo band Thursday. Rickley's label Collect Records handled the distribution for Cities Aviv's next release, Your Discretion is Trust, in 2015. The album feels like a transition from the shoegaze-inspired early music to a clearer sound with more focus on the rapping. A lot of elements from Black Pleasure and Come to Life are still present, like the shouted flow and cloud rap sample shops, but the lyrics are more clear and the music is more polished. There are also more experimental passages on the album, like the noise interlude Nico. The general vibe of the album is still atmospheric, but there is also songs like Discrimination and Puncture, which is downright aggressive. After the album release, Gavin would end up with label issues once again. It turns out that Collect Records was being funded by Martin Shkreli, the man who skyrocketed the price of the medication Daraprim. The label had to shut down due to either bands leaving or the label losing its funding, and Cities Aviv was once again without a label. After this, not much Cities Aviv music was released for a while, except for a bunch of singles. Although one of these singles is one of the best Cities Aviv songs ever. In 2017, If I Could Hold Your Soul dropped, which contains everything that makes Cities Aviv great. The bright chopped up sample clashes against Gavin's shouting, and the drums are more fast-paced than usual. It's one of the few Cities Aviv songs that fits into a gym playlist. There's also a part 2 of the song on YouTube, which is produced by Navy Blue. He also did some collaborations with other artists during this period. For example, in 2017, he was featured on the hardcore band Show Me the Body's album Corpus One on the song Stress, and on the indie pop group Beach Fossils album Somersault on the song Rise. In 2018, Gavin moved back to Memphis and was about to release his next album. This time, he didn't team up with a label, but decided to start his own. Under his new label, called Total Works, he dropped the album Raised for a Better View. The album is another step away from the more experimental sound, and it's Cities Aviv's most accessible album since Digital Lows. The shouted flow is gone, and at points is using the same drowsy flow that he uses on his more well-known albums, released in the 2020s. I would still classify this album as cloud rap, but Cities Aviv is moving more towards abstract hip-hop, and the album is like a prelude to the insane album run he would have a few years later. Through Total Works, Gavin also released music under his side projects African American Sound Recordings and WGM and his band Tyre. WGM and African American Sound Recordings are basically the same project, and I will talk about that project later on in the video. The band Tyre featured Cities Aviv on vocals and unknown people just called G and L on guitar and drums. The music on their 2018 EP, just called EP, consists of industrial post-punk, but songs like Sina reminds me of Cities Aviv songs like If I Could Hold Your Soul. This is a great EP, and the only issue with it is that the songs are way too short, like there's no reason for the track Sina to only be 30 seconds long. There was also a cassette called Balmain, released a year earlier on the label Ormolycka, which is more drony and experimental. It's a shame that they only released 2 short EPs, because the music is so much more interesting than all the trendy post-punk bands that have come out the last few years, and I feel like they could have done something great on a full-length record. On the label, he's also been releasing music by his friends, such as Lucia and Outside Source. You might be more familiar with these two under the names Royalty and Repelled Ghosts, which is the names they went under when producing beats for Cities Aviv early on. For fans of Cities Aviv, I recommend checking out Luca's 2018 album Chicken Wire, which got some production from Cities Aviv himself. Another release I highly recommend from the label is James Walker's EP Delicate Creatures. It's a cool mix of alternative R&B and noise rock with the trap drums, and it's one of the most interesting releases I've heard in a while. Since 2020, Cities Aviv has had an insane run, releasing amazing albums at a high rate. In 2020 alone, he released the albums Immortal Flame, Score, Gum, and Accompanied by a Blazing Solo. On these releases, Cities Aviv moves further away from the cloud rap atmospheres of the earlier releases and more towards abstract hip-hop. All of them are worth a listen, but my favorite one is Gum. There are some elements on the album that sounds like the older music, like for example the sample shops on the song Over, but overall the album is pretty different from what has been released prior. The percussion is very simplistic, and some songs have no drums at all. The heavy reverb is completely gone, and the samples are more skeletal to make room for the rapping, which is mostly the main focus. The drowsy flow that was introduced on Raised for a Better View is used throughout the album, and the bars are pretty abstract. It's hard to put a finger on what makes the album so good. It's just the general cozy vibe of it, and the way the rapping adds to the feeling. The outro Power Approaches is basically an album on its own, being 45 minutes long. It might be a bit lengthy, but the different beat switches keep the song interesting. After these releases, Gavin slowed down a bit, only releasing The Crashing Sound of How It Goes in 2021 and Man Plays the Horn and working title for the album Secret Waters in 2022. In my opinion, Man Plays the Horn is the best Cities Aviv album since Black Pleasure. It's still in the realm of abstract hip-hop rather than cloud rap, but it's more varied and the rapping is more energetic than on Gum. A lot of songs still have minimal rapping or are instrumentals, but on the tracks where he raps throughout the song, the lyrics are less abstract and the bars are more fully formed. The full album is produced by Gavin, so it makes sense that some songs are more focused on the production and others on the lyrics. Even though it's not a cloud rap album, it's still a euphoric experience with a lot of chill beats and some dreamy interludes, such as To Dream in Color and Ecstasy Reigns. Some of my favorite tracks include Cinema Club, Hole, and the super dreamy Subterranean Staircase. There's also the 12-minute long instrumental track Smoking on a Brighter Day, which might be too long for some, but I find it very meditative. The album is 1 hour and 22 minutes long, and 1 hour and 55 minutes if you listen to the director's cut, so it might not be for the people who found Cities Aviv from TikTok. And for those who can't sit through such a long album, the follow-up working title for the album Secret Waters got much of the same qualities. The album is around 50 minutes and are more easily digestible than Man Plays the Horn. During this period, he also dropped a ton of music under the African American Sound Recordings moniker mentioned earlier. The music Gavin drops under this name varies between instrumental hip-hop, ambient, noise and jazzy sound collages. A good introduction to this project for Cities Aviv fans is the album Tamika's Lodge from 2022, since it sounds the most like his usual sample-heavy and atmospheric production. The best songs on the album are the longer ones, like Astral Breaking and By Tamika. Even though they're long, they don't overstay their welcome, and things switches up before it gets boring. By Tamika, for example, starts out with shimmering synths, then goes into mystical jazz music with chaotic drums, and then a soulful vocal sample comes in towards the end, keeping the song interesting for 9 minutes. Gavin's production really is good enough to stand on its own, and I hope he keeps making instrumental hip-hop albums once in a while. The more ambient and experimental albums like Free Flower are also really cool, but is a bit more of an acquired taste and more for fans of ambient or sound collages rather than rap fans. Now in 2024, Cities Aviv keeps pouring out music. Since March this year, he has released the split Sammy's Stat, the EP Bernadette Leak, and the compilation Archive and Practice 001, and the album Café Tom Tom. Out of these, I think Café Tom Tom is the most notable one. It's different from the rest of Cities Aviv's catalog and sounds more like Gavin's other project, African American Sound Recordings. There is no rapping, and Gavin's voice is only present vaguely in the background, almost whispering. Songs like Discs Under Antwerp, NY Occasions, and The Afters are basically cloud rap beats, and the voice acts almost like a vocal sample. The instrumentals are super nice, and the album gives some hope that Cities Aviv will incorporate some more cloud rap elements into his new sound on future releases. Hopefully Cities Aviv will get the recognition he deserves in the future and keep releasing great material at the same pace he does now, and I'm excited to see what he comes up with and if he's able to top albums like Black Pleasure and Man Plays the Horn. Thanks for watching.